thank you so much for putting this all together. Thank you for the beautiful introduction. Let's get started. Roughly 13 kilometers north of the Niger River, on the southern edge of the Sahara Desert, the city of Timbuktu offers refuge from the harsh desert climate. It began as a seasonal settlement of the Tuaregs, a nomadic ethnic group native to West Africa, and later grew into a trade port on the shores of the desert. Islam was introduced to West Africa, including present-day Mali, through trans-Saharan trade routes beginning in the 8th century. Islamic merchants brought not only goods, but also their religion and culture. Malian communities often integrated versions of Islam with their local pre-existing beliefs. The form of Islam practiced in Timbuktu fostered what we would categorize today as both secular and religious learning. The city adopted the Arabic script to strengthen relationships with other Islamic centers while retaining their native languages. At its peak in the 1500s, the city was home to hundreds of madrasas, or Islamic schools, such as Tinkore Mosque, and universities teaching medicine, science, and history alongside religion. The diversity of studies is reflected in the diversity of subjects covered in the city's numerous manuscripts. These institutions and texts attracted students from across the Sahara and fostered a rich academic community. With a population of roughly 100,000 at this time, it is estimated that at least a quarter of the city's inhabitants were students, underscoring Timbuktu's rich history as a center for scholarship and education. Timbuktu's central location and diplomatic connections also created a vast network of manuscript trading. The resident scholars not only studied these manuscripts, but also produced their own, contributing to the city's growing collection. Manuscripts are dynamic objects, both physically and pedagogically, embodying layers of meaning that extend beyond their text. As repositories of knowledge, art, and culture, they function as tangible records of intellectual and material traditions, spiritual beliefs, and societal priorities. Furthermore, their materiality is indicative of a region's available resources. For example, scholars in Timbuktu wrote on rag-based paper or paper imported from Italy and used locally sourced sheep and goat hides as covers. A manuscript's format often serves functional purposes as well. Margins, for instance, frame the text, but also provide space for commentary, corrections, or additions, demonstrating the dynamic nature of learning and textual interpretation. Some manuscripts, such as a prayer book, like this one, would be more highly decorated and with more illuminations as a devotional practice. In Islamic schools, the memorization and transcription of texts was facilitated by unbound or loosely bound manuscripts, allowing individual leaves to be borrowed, rearranged, and transcribed for personal collections. Each mark and modification reveals more about the object's past, embedding the manuscript within a broader historical and cultural narrative. However, the frequent use of manuscripts also leads to wear and damage, making their conservation an ongoing challenge. In 1894, French colonial forces occupied Timbuktu, bringing the city's manuscript tradition to a halt. French became the official language taught in schools, rendering Timbuktu's manuscripts unreadable to generations of its own people. French colonizers stole many manuscripts, with some still in the collection of France's National Library. In response, many manuscripts were hidden by their owners until after Mali gained independence in 1960. These manuscripts are a symbol of Timbuktu's historical significance, providing tangible evidence of its intellectual history and the people's desire to preserve it. Laboriously written and transcribed by hand, using some of the tools you can see here, these texts encapsulate centuries of accumulated knowledge. They were often kept within families and private libraries, preserved as intellectual treasures, historical artifacts, and family heirlooms. In this context, the production, reproduction, use, and repair of manuscripts can be interpreted as a community tradition that maintains Timbuktu's intellectual legacy. As scholars have come to understand the importance of these manuscripts in the past few decades, they established numerous public libraries within the city, consolidating and cataloging the city's previously fragmented collection. Timbuktu's librarians and scholars were and continue to be responsible for their stewardship. Mohammed Mama Haidara was a well-respected scholar and librarian who worked with UNESCO's Ahmed Baba Institute of Higher Learning and Islamic Research to consolidate the manuscripts of Timbuktu and surrounding cities. His collection would become one of the largest and oldest in the city. This was a part of a larger effort to revive and safeguard Timbuktu's intellectual legacy following centuries of decline after Morocco's 1591 invasion and later disruptions by French colonial rule. In 1981, upon Muhammad Haidar's passing, his son, Abdul Qadir Haidar, inherited both his father's library and his mission to consolidate Timbuktu's manuscripts. He continued his father's work with UNESCO for 10 years, leaving to establish Savama DCI, an organization dedicated to the safeguarding of Islamic manuscripts, as well as founding the Mama Haidar Commemorative Library. This library contained their family's collection of manuscripts, as well as a conservation lab, digitization studio, and exhibit space. However, after nearly a decade of success and global recognition, the Mama Haidar Commemorative Library would sit empty. In November 2011, secular Tuareg rebels allied themselves with the fundamentalist Islamist militant organization Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, or AQIM, in an attempt to amass greater resources and achieve an independent and secular state in northern Mali known as Azawad. This Tuareg movement became known as the National Movement for the Liberation of Azawad, or MNLA. Due to their inherently opposed ideologies, the MNLA's partnership with the AQIM quickly disintegrated, and in June, the AQIM overpowered the Tuareg rebels and occupied Timbuktu. Among AQIM's targets were Timbuktu's manuscripts, which they saw as a threat to their fundamentalist view of Islam. Timbuktu had long been a center of Islamic scholarship, embracing both religious and secular studies, an intellectual and cultural tradition that stood in direct opposition to AQIM's extremist ideology. Despite the dire threat to their own lives, the people of Timbuktu recognized that the loss of these manuscripts could mean the erasure of their history, identity, and generations of knowledge. The extremity of their situation and the strength required to undermine an oppressive regime underscores the value of these objects, not only as sources of knowledge, but as symbols of the city's history and its people's resilience. I argue that the actions taken by Malian citizens, with support from various international organizations, provides a positive model of cultural heritage preservation that emphasizes local agency. In July 2012, recognizing the threat, Haidara made the difficult decision to empty Timbuktu's libraries and began planning the relocation of over 300,000 manuscripts to Bamako, Mali's capital city. With help from Emily Brady, a conservator from Washington State, he reached out to his international contacts. Various organizations in the Netherlands, including the Prince Claus Fund, donated hundreds of thousands of dollars, and an American bank assisted in transferring money. The funds went towards renting vehicles, hiring drivers and couriers, and bribing local authorities. However, as Edward Said argued in his 1996 essay, Professionals and Amateurs, the true guardians of culture often emerge not from formal institutions, but from passionate individuals with a love for their heritage. This principle was evident here. Despite international support and funding, the rescue itself was carried out by Malians, volunteers, families, and young couriers who risked the 630-mile journey south to Bamako. Their loyalty was deeply personal, tied not to professional obligation, but to a shared understanding of the manuscripts as cultural lifelines that embodied their community's history and identity. Haidar's founding of the Savama DCI played an integral role in providing aid during the 2012 crisis. Various other associations, such as the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library, or HIML, also provided resources and funding, and Haidar's global network of scholars, conservators, and funders once again rallied to support the effort. In 2013, the University of Hamburg Center for the Study of Manuscript Cultures worked in conjunctions with the United Nations Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in Mali, UNESCO, and the Ahmed Baba Institute of Higher Islamic Studies and Research in Timbuktu to create a training program for Malian manuscript conservators. This 2-year course ensures the sustainability of conservation projects in Mali without the continued reliance on international aid. The digitization effort was especially significant, allowing the content of the manuscripts to be preserved and globally accessible for the first time, while simultaneously reducing the risk associated with physical use. HIML, in association with Savama DCI, began a massive digitization project in 2013. Volunteers in Bamako, many without formal training, carefully cataloged each manuscript, creating digital copies that would retain textual and visual knowledge even if the original objects or materials were lost. For Haidara, this process was not just about saving artifacts as his father had, but safeguarding Mali's intellectual heritage. The digitization has since been completed, but over 4.25 million unique image files must now be cataloged. With some manuscripts fully available to researchers for the first time, the University of Cape Town's Timbuktu Manuscript Project is working to translate and study the written contents of these objects. I contend that this collaboration between Malian institutions and international organizations provides a positive model of aid as it prioritizes local agency in the conservation of cultural heritage. The effort of Malian volunteers to relocate these manuscripts, facilitated by international financial support, provides a remarkable example of transnational collaboration that maintains Mali's agency in the stewardship of its material heritage. Thank you.
Great stuff. It's continuing to be great. All right. Okay.